Hey, and welcome back to another LeetCode video. We're looking at another easy problem today. LeetCode 3658, GCD of odd and even sums. The purpose of these videos is to practice the interview process. So we are going through the typical approach where we understand the problem first, check constraints, go through the examples, come up with a solution and its runtime and space complexity before we write a single line of code, and then we implement the solution and code, check if it's error-free, and then we submit the test cases. And this approach might be quite different from how you would maybe normally solve problems on LeetCode. The purpose of this exercise is really to just use a LeetCode problem, practice the interview process, as you might encounter it during a coding interview. Right, so let's first understand what this problem is about. So we are given an integer n, and our task is to compute the GCD, the greatest common divisor, of two values. Of the values sum odd, the sum of the first n odd numbers, and the value sum even, the sum of the first n even numbers. Return the GCD of the odd and the even sums. Right. Okay, so my first question would be, well, can n be 0, and what does that mean? And apparently n is going to be larger than 0. Nice, good to know. So we have at least something in our odd and even sums. Cool. So next stop, looking at the example, see we have n equals 4, and summing the odd numbers would be, so the first 4 odd numbers, not just the odd numbers up to 4. So that's obviously 1 plus 3 plus 5 plus 7, that's 16. And then we do the same with the even number, starting at 2, going up to 8. And the sum is 20. And yeah, and the GCD is 4 of those two. Right. 2 is a common divisor, but it's not the greatest common divisor. So 4 is the next one. 6 is not a divisor. 8 is also not a divisor. Yeah, so 4 is the greatest common divisor here. And here's another example where n is 5. So we just add one more number here. And we just deal with different numbers. And now the GCD is probably 5. Yeah, it's 5. Cool. So something that you should know is how to implement GCD by hand. And you know how to compute the GCD using the Euclidean algorithm. If you don't know how to do that, you should look that up and memorize it. So we're definitely going to need, I said I want to explain the solution before I write the code, right? So what we definitely need is a little helper function to compute the GCD. And then I think we can just iterate over the first n odd and even numbers. I think we can do this in a single for loop where we just iterate up until n times 4. Right, so if n is 4, the largest number that we have to add is 8. N is 5, the largest number that we have is 10. So I think we have a simple for loop, and depending on whether the loop variable is odd or even, we increase our even sum or odd sum. And after the for loop, we just call the GCD function once, and we'll be done with it. And the runtime would be linear in the number, well, linear in n. And we would have, computing the GCD takes logarithmic time. So that's smaller than n, so it will be O of n runtime. And we just need constant space because we only need to keep track of the sums. We don't need to store anything else. Cool. So that said, let's start with the implementation. Time and space. And well, we're going to need a little helper function for computing the GCD of two numbers a and b. And the way I remember that is, while b is still not 0, we are going to swap a with b, and we're going to swap b with a modulo b. And then at the end we just return a. That's burned into my brain, so good for me, I guess. Cool. So now next we iterate with I over the numbers up until n times 2. However, in Python, the end of the range is not inclusive, so we have to add 1 to make sure that we actually get all the way up to 8 when n is 4, right? Yeah, and so now what do? Well, we now have to add that value to something. And I like to do it like this. We just create a sums array that contains the odd and the even sums. And I'll just write into that array at position I modulo 2. So if I is even, we write in the first entry in the array. If I is odd, we write in the second one. And then plus equals I. And note, if I is 0, that doesn't change anything. I could also start from a 1 if I wanted to. Doesn't make a difference here, since adding 0 doesn't change it. And then we just return the GCD of, well, we have to pass into numbers. And in Python, you can do this like so. That will split the sums array into 2 parameters that was then received function. And that's everything we need. So let's run the test cases. Right, so they pass. And now let's submit the solution. There you go. So that completes that easy problem.